All right, thanks everybody for joining us. Keller Williams Princeton, it's September 16th, and we're covering a special series on the 24 topics of the millionaire real estate agent. Always like to open it up with the dedication in front of the book. It's dedicated to men and women everywhere. So far, we've gone through quite a number of the topics. And just to recap sort of where we've been and where we're going today. Feel free to just shout out any questions if there's anything in here, but just again to talk through these are the key topics relevant for not only experienced agents, but really for everybody. They're considered as the golden pages in the book. And it's good to bookmark, tab those pages, those page numbers. It's only one edition of MREA, so it's easy to remember and memorize those page numbers. What's MREA really about? It's about thinking big, aiming high, acting bold, and living large. The beginning of the book is really about building based upon models. We talk about models being a stable foundation, creating a stable foundation for your business, and then layering on top of that the creativity. We talked about the series of breakthroughs. So the beginning of the book is really about mindset. We start with how we think, and that's what can pull us through and lead us through the higher levels of achievement. The foundational models, the 3 L's, everybody should know by now: leads, listings, and leverage. They form the basis for breaking through the higher levels of achievement. In real estate, you got to have client leads. It's as simple as that. So you have 2 jobs. You have your job as a sales agent and all those things, but you also have to do lead generation. Every professional has 2 jobs, and one of them is lead generation. Listings, still the highest leverage, maximum earning opportunities in the industry. We talked about that. We talked about leverage, the people, the who, the systems, the how, the tools, the what. And we'll talk a little bit more about that today with systems documentation. 4 stages of growth: think, earn, net, and receive. So we've covered thinking, we've covered earning, and now today we're going to talk about netting $1 million. Of the 6 common myth understandings, number 6, having a goal, not fully realizing it, is negative. The truth is having a goal and not trying is negative. You can read more about those. We have bold coming up. So in bold, we say that's when the real you shows up. Most people never know what they can really achieve because there's some fear or myth understanding, some limiting belief holding them back. So the real you can only show up when you try. So these are the 9 ways that a millionaire real estate agent thinks. They're powered by a big why. They're powered by big goals, big models. They think possibilities. Possibilities turn into probabilities. They think action, right? You got to get up and do something. You can't just sit in class all day. Think without fear. They move past those. They're seeing past. They look past those things that are uncomfortable in the short term. You know, maybe phone calls or door knocking. Maybe there's some kind of fear around that, but they think without fear because again they're focused on their big why and big goals and models, how to pull them through all that. Progress. We think progress. It's incremental. Success doesn't come in overnight. It's definitely earned. And we have to start to think like business owners. So we're thinking competitively, strategically. And if you really want to build a big business, a long-term career in real estate, then you have to think standards and you have to think service. You have to think about what's unique about you and why somebody would want to hire you and pay you. The big why, you can explore this. This is a great exercise you can do, personal growth. The highest and best level is to be the best you can be. That's the subtitle today at MREA. It's not about the money, it's about being the best version of yourself. So if you haven't thought about your big why lately, I'd love to sit down with you and do that. There's some exercises we can go through. It's a great time of year to reset goals for next year. We can look at your GPS and your 411 and revamp all that based upon your big why. Value proposition, again, best real estate agents know why people should hire them and provide a specific set of services. That's also part of goal setting. So we can look at that. What is your value proposition? What makes you unique? All that ties back into the models that we've been covering so far. We talked about the 80-20 rule. 80% of our results come from 20% of our actions. The 20% of the MREAs, lead generation, focusing on seller listings, and getting leverage in our business. So moving past thinking, now we're getting into earning. So now we're getting more into the science of MREA. We start with our economic model. So we have to know our goals. There's 2 numbers that every real estate agent should know, and that's their actuals, their goals and their actuals. And we keep track of them on a monthly and even a weekly basis. 8 goal categories of the MREA. These are the numbers that they track. These are the things that they're looking at. Leads generated. Everything starts with leads. There's no business without leads. And leads have to bring us listings and contracts written and contracts closed. It's a business, so we have to start thinking about money and people as the beginning of leverage. The first leverage is likely to start with an administrative assistant or some other outsourced help. Systems and tools, that's technology and the models that we have here with MREA. And a big one not to be overlooked or missed is personal development and education. So personal development and education is an investment. It's not an expense. It's something that's going to bring value to you not only one time in the moment, but it's also going to add value to the rest of your career and personal growth. There's a bold law, your business grows to the extent that you do. So again, growing as a person, that's going to lead to growing as a business. The science of success is really staying faithful to the MREA models and then innovating on top of that. And here's the 4 models, right? The economic model, the generation model, the budget model, and the organizational model. So far, we've covered the first. Well, we've covered all 4 of these now. We're moving into that. Here's a couple of graphs on page 122 and 123. Shows how the 4 models work together in their relationships. So we start with the economic model, which leads into the budget model. A lesson from Warren Buffett: the right models do matter. In the book, you'll hear they'll share stories about Warren Buffett, how a lot of his success was based upon the models that he learned when he was in school, and how he continued to embrace it and master these over his lifetime. And he still does today. He keeps the books, the specific books that he learned on his desk, and he refers to them daily. So we treat MREA the same way. We're going to read this every year and bookmark those pages and go back and reference them. We talked about the economic model, focus on appointments, conversion rates. We have to know our numbers. We've done the math. If you'd like to sit down, you could schedule an appointment with me. I did share my calendar on email this morning. We can go through, we have an Excel spreadsheet of this. We can work through these numbers for your business specifically. I'm not going to go through all that here again. We're just going to fast forward. I'll mention business planning clinic is coming up. There is some new data around the conversion rates. The conversion rates you see here, the 80% and 65% is from the original MREA. And those have been updated. They're closer to 70 and 75% right now. And the point is you have to know your specific numbers. So you need to go back and look at your numbers for the past year and see how you relate to those. If you're new in the business, start tracking those numbers so that the next year and the years ahead, you'll have a frame of reference on those. There's some different exercises we can do. I'd be more than happy to sit down with you one-on-one to do that. Lead generation model, again, works synergistically with the economic model. But the 3 key areas: prospect marketing, setting up a database, and systematically marketing to your database. If you can get the lead generation model right, everything else will fall into place. Here's just some graphs. This is a great page to remember, page 138. Some things missing from MREA since it is 18 years old are things like social media. However, you will find the subject matter and the model systems and the content to be extremely relevant to today's market. It's still a conversation about database, and it's still a conversation about how we prospect and market to that database, being marketing based and prospecting enhanced. And the whole goal of the lead generation model is to capture, right, cast a wide net of the general public, people we haven't met, and bring them in closer to us through prospecting and marketing. We talked about the 8x8, the 33 touch, the 12 direct, and moving those people into your target groups. Those are your farm territories until you meet them. That's your net groups, and then inside your allied resources. So when you look at your database, most likely 80% of your business is coming from 20% of your database. Those are your allied resources. So the goal, the point is to know who they are and to be communicating and staying in touch with them the most. We're not going to go through all these, but you can look at the 8x8. You'll see it's not just a computer program. You know, it's not just a smart plan inside command. There's a lot of human interaction related to this, to building a deep connection with people. 33 touch is how we stay in touch with them long term. 12 direct is how we actually capture people from outside that we haven't met yet. And there is some discussion here in the lead generation ratios. So 50 to 1, you can think about it this way. If you had 100 people in your database, you should be able to generate like a 2% return. That would be 2 transactions from the 100. So you can do that math. Nowadays, with smart plans and some of the other technology we have, we're seeing higher rates of return, maybe 6 to 10%. So that's 100 people in your database, could lead to up to 10 opportunities a year. So do the math on your database and figure out what your potential is. There's a couple exercises we could do there. Again, the 4 laws of lead generation: build a database, feed it every day, communicate to it every day, and service all the leads that come your way. One thing I was going to touch on, I always think of something after this class that maybe I would have emphasized more during class, something I wanted to touch on back again with the lead generation model. It's a very subtle paragraph. It's in the bottom of page 151. And it's really talking about the disciplines of sales scripts and dialogues. If you haven't internalized the scripts and dialogues for your buyer and seller presentations, you're not going to have as much confidence. So while we're building a database, feeding it, systematically communicating with it, 8x8, 33 touch, 12 direct, if we don't have our regular scripts and role play practices, if we don't practice our presentations ahead of time, that's going to affect our conversion rates. So we have scripts and role play practice on the calendar. We do it with Place Princeton. We do it in our productivity coaching program. So I just really wanted to kind of come back and touch on scripts and dialogues and how important they are. We have Bold coming up in the 4th quarter. You're going to get the latest scripts and dialogue for market of the moment, buyers and sellers. It's a great time to catch up on that. And in Bold, we do go back and kind of break down scripts and role play a little bit more back into the science of it, the science of those conversations. And it's a great time to refresh that. If you haven't come to one of our classes, tune in. You can join us remotely Monday through Friday in the mornings at 9 o'clock for scripts, role play, objection handlers. So don't overlook scripts and role play practice. It's going to have a big impact to everything else in your lead generation model. Budget model, we talked about leading with revenue, not expenses, playing red light, green light, and sticking to your budget model. And that's probably the biggest takeaway of the whole budget model, is sticking to it. Talked about the cost of sales, operating expenses. There's a model we refer to as the 30-30-40 model, where 30% of your GCI represents the cost of sales, 30% represents the operating expenses, and 40% your net income. Now, of the operating expenses, the 2 biggest pieces are salaries and lead generation. There is a chart of accounts in the back of MREA, and we do have the Excel spreadsheet file, so we can share that with you if you don't already track that yourself. We use the same chart of accounts to run the market center, so the entire company up the line to KWRI all follows the same models inside MREA. There's a couple different charts in here. Pages 157 gives you some of the expenses. There is some new updated numbers. They haven't changed too much, but in Business Planning Clinic, you will see some slight tweaks around those percentages. But in large part, the models are holding true after 20 years of research going into MREA, and 20 years later, 40 years overall, these models are still holding up and holding true. The organizational model, so this is when you're doing everything else you can do. Now you need to hire administrative help. And there is a discussion on page 160, something I wanted to kind of come back and touch on. A lot of agents ask about hiring administrative assistants, and there's always a debate around hiring a licensed assistant versus an unlicensed assistant. I wanted to kind of, and there's a table, there's a figure on the figure 20 on the bottom of page 160. It talks about the pros and cons, but what I think is more interesting is the paragraphs before that. There was, during this research for MREA, there was a big aha that came to Gary and the researchers when they were doing this. And what they found was that you actually have to hire that administrative assistant before, or in order to document your systems and models. In other words, you're unlikely to have the time, energy, and maybe even the skills to document all the systems and things that you do. Now, it sounds strange. Why would I hire somebody else to document or tell me what I already know what to do? The point is so that you can document it to make it reproducible, so you can train other people how you want those things done. So it's a little bit backwards, but hiring that first administrative assistant could be the key to you actually being able to grow your business beyond what natural limits you've encountered as an individual. So take a look at the paragraph on 160. It's interesting to me that it's actually very unlikely that agents will have the time and energy to document their own systems, so they have to bring in help. And we're going to cover that today with systems documentation. Any questions on any of this so far? The next couple pages we do skip through pages. Let's see, I think it was basically we're fast forwarding here now. There's the millionaire real estate agent models from page 172 up until today's conversation. It's not covered by the slides for today. The point is that there are just slight nuances to the millionaire real estate agent as they work through these models at the higher production levels. Certain opportunities, challenges, opportunities, things tend to creep up, God bless you, and tend to affect them at those higher production levels. So take a look at that if you're interested. There are some additional tables and graphs in there, a lot of great information. But what we're going to look at today here, in the exercise 192 tasks. Well, in the student handout for this class, there's a list of 192 tasks, and the point of that was to look and see what are the things that you would like to start offsetting in your business. What are the things that you would like the administrative assistant to do? And there's a difference between fiduciary and functional. So the administrative assistant is going to be focused more on functional tasks while you stay focused on the fiduciary. Now that kind of goes back to the conversation about licensed or unlicensed. At the end of the day, there's a lot of pros to having a licensed assistant, and it can also get very messy having a licensed assistant. A lot of times the licensed assistants will want to do their own business. They will have their own deals. So it runs a little counter-intuitive that you have an administrative assistant who you want to work for you and help build your team, but they're still distracted by doing things on the side for themselves. And that's, while it's helpful for showings and open houses and having that extra licensed person who can interface with the public, which unlicensed assistants are not allowed to do, there is going to be trade-offs in terms of goals and outcomes. So the best teams hire administrative assistants, I think, who are dedicated to the administrative side. In other words, leave the sales agents, the licensed agents, to focus on your listings and your buyer sides. Let them manage the sales. Let them do what they're really good at there, and hire administrative talent who's really good at what they do. If you can get your administrative hub organized and together, you can grow out and build everything else. But if you don't have that administrative hub really organized, in harmony, working with you, you're not going to be able to grow and build out. And that's a challenge a lot of teams run into. They rush out to hire a buyer's agent, showing assistants, but they haven't built out the administrative hub. It runs on an entrepreneurial spirit for a little while until everything starts to collapse and break down and ultimately falls apart. And then they're frustrated and having to start over. Just take the time, invest in the right administrative help, and hire talent. Go back and revisit that conversation. Learn how to train and consult. Right? This is not top-down management anymore. Now we're recruiting, training, consulting, and retaining those people. Any questions or anything so far? This is the organizational model of the millionaire real estate agent. You can see right there in the center is the marketing administrative hub. And coming out of that, you have the front end activities of lead generation and marketing, and you have the back end of transaction management, listing management, and those types of things. And then you'll see on the sides, here's where the sales professionals come in. You get that lead listing specialist who's overseeing all the listings, and you have that buyer specialist. The buyer specialist is actually overseeing other buyers, other buyer agents. And so that's how it's organized. But start with that administrative hub in the center. That first hire, that key hire in the admin, could eventually move up into that top spot as the CEO to run your business, allowing you to step aside to this, what they refer to as the 7th level. And then you'd really have a business that's running and operating on its own while you're off living your life's purpose and mission. Profit share, so in the organizational model, there's some discussions around how you compensate people. There's about 9 different compensation methods, and having a profit share program is one of them. So today we're jumping into net. So net a million. So there's a graph on, let's see, I'll pull up the graph. There's a list of 16 items here. Oops. Okay, here it is. So these are the issues. So as you move from earn a million to net a million, it is fluid. At this point, you have systems and models in place. You have administrative help, most likely, and now you're moving through. And it happens. It can happen quite readily and quite quickly. Now, as we're moving from earning a million to netting a million, there's 5 different categories here, and there's different issues or opportunities that come up with each one. Number one, sustaining a lead generation program based upon marketing and prospecting, consistently running that program. And consistency is the key to this. Top agents their marketing never stops. They don't take a break. They don't back off when they're getting too much business. There's no seasonality to it. They are doing the same thing. They have a 12-month plan, and they run that plan systematically and to the point that it becomes automatic. And that's really when the fun begins. When you can build out that lead generation system to the point that it becomes automated, you'll have, you're taking those listings, you'll have no choice but to get leverage in your business because you're going to need help. Now, tracking and converting leads through others. So this is accountability piece. Having a system in place in order to actually track and convert those leads. There's a lot of different inefficiencies that can come up. It can be just, the way that people respond to it. Maybe you don't have a system. Well, who's going to follow up on that person? Who's going to return that? Who's checking and doing these things? If you have a system in place, now you have a tool, a vehicle to hold people accountable. There's a lot of different reasons why leads, fall and get lost. The point is having a system, making it part of your systems to prevent that from happening. Protecting your lead generation focus time. This is the #1 thing that MREA is focused on. They will protect that time, that lead generation time at all costs. And we teach that with new agents here. We say time block in mornings, 3 hours every morning. That takes time. There's preparation, there's the activity of lead generation, and there's maintenance and follow-up. But focusing that time and dedicating that time each day, regardless of everything else that's going on in the business, don't get distracted by admin and all these other things. You have to protect that lead gen time. Weighing your options. So the process of discovering what works and doesn't work for you, well, that's basically the idea. There's going to be some things that work for you around lead generation. The point is, hold your money accountable. You're going to invest in a new lead generation method. Hold that money accountable. Keep track of it, and also recognize that it's going to take time. It may take 6 to 12 months for a new lead generation method to actually start to produce enough data for you to know whether or not it's paying off. And they all come back at different rates of return. But here now we talk about it is the cost per lead, and we talk about command and Facebook leads, less than $2 a lead versus maybe say one of these lead aggregators online who might be charging $50 to $100 or even more for leads. So knowing what lead generation methods work for you and testing them and proving them that they work. A lot of people get wrapped up in the creativity of lead generation and the idea of doing a lot of different things. 80-20 rule still applies here too. You're going to boil your lead generation down to maybe just 3 things that you do, and you're going to focus on those 3 and do them at a high level. If you're trying to do more than that, then you're going to be too diluted, and it's going to be too hard to really be able to track those returns. You're not going to be able to give each lead generation method a chance and really the attention it needs to know if it's working or not. We have to know the minimum number of selling listings you must list each month. Sounds easy. However, when the market's changing, when you're dealing with, let's say, a seller's market, let's say prices are going up, days on market is going down, it's very easy to sell a house right now. You'd think that what impact would that have on your business? Well, what can happen? #1, there might be more FSBOs out there, more for sale by owners. They can see that a house sells in 2 days. Why hire an agent? I can sell it myself. Or other agents, other people are getting into the business. People are looking for a second career, so now you have new people coming into the industry. We talked about that in MegaCamp. 1.5 million agents in NAR, more than ever in history. So these are all diluting your ability to take new listings. There's not going to be as many new listings out there. So you have to adjust your numbers to the market conditions. You have to adjust your numbers. You may have to work harder at certain activities to generate the number of listings that you actually need each month in those markets. So knowing you're tracking not only your numbers, but the market's numbers. And we talked about that at the stakeholders meeting yesterday, and we're going to do more. We're going to do more to focus on that. Even the local neighborhoods and communities, you know, the township level, not just county level, but township level. You know, what's going on? What's the turnover? What's the carrying capacity in those markets? Each neighborhood and township is going to be different and unique, and you need to understand that in order to relate it to your business in order to stay on track. Of course, you know, that results in knowing the listing minimum each month. And another point here, as you do get leverage, but still under listings, number 7 is getting sellers to accept the team concept. At the end of the day, if you can document your systems and standards in a way that other people can reproduce them, you will be able to deliver higher quality of service at a higher volume, a higher quantity of service. There's a part, it's back on earlier in the book, but there's actually a comment around the idea that most agents feel that what they do is so unique to them that nobody else can do it. And the truth is that that's not the reality. The truth is that anybody's systems and ways of their standards, their service can be documented and reproduced. And actually, if you think about it, there's a good analogy to a surgeon. Teams are like surgeons, right? So if you go to see your doctor, right, you want that doctor to be a specialist on what you need them for, right? You don't want to see them answering phones at the front desk. You don't want to see them doing accounts receivable and paying bills. And no offense to those people in those roles, but what do you really want the doctor to do? Come in and do surgery, right? So the team concept is kind of the same way. You as the rainmaker are going to come in to do exactly what needs to be done to represent them as the fiduciary in those deals and transactions. How the leads are generated, how the transactions are managed, those can be done by your staff and team members. And so that's the idea around that. And I think that analogy around the surgeon and the doctor is a great way to get your sellers to accept the team concept. Consistently marketing your seller listings for more leads. So we talked about the number 1 lead source for MREAs is listings. That's the number 1 source of leads for them is listings and marketing those listings. The point here is that don't lose sight of those buyer leads. Take the time to still convert those seller leads, you know, 1 for 1 into buyers leads. In today's market, you know, things are moving quick. It can be heated. You know, you're having to go back and come up with new listings, having to do extra efforts to generate the listings that you needed because they're just selling too quickly and there's too much competition. Don't lose sight of generating the buyer leads, and remember that the MREA model is based upon a 1-to-1. So 1-to-1 meaning 1 seller listing side versus 1 sales side. So it's a very balanced model. So keep in mind, don't take your eyes off those buyer leads. Don't ignore them. Continue to market to generate those buyer leads as well. Leverage itself, again, take the time to learn. If you've never worked in management before, if you've never worked with people before, take the time to learn and implement the recruit, training, and consultant keep model. There's a bunch of great discussion in the book around that. There's some great models in that. There's some great courses that you can take throughout Keller Williams and through MAPS on this. Career visioning is number 1. 30-60-90. So career visioning is how you identify and select talent. 30-60-90 is how you onboard them. Success through others is how you run teams. There's other MAPS programs, hiring the perfect administrative assistant. I think Monica Reynolds still teaches that. These are all opportunities to get leadership skills. There's other resources out there. Brad Knowles, we're doing a leadership class right now with Brad Knowles on market center leadership. So even in the office, we're learning how to become better leaders in our roles as OP, TL, MCA, DFI, agent services, AMCA, front desk, program manager, all of us have capacity to learn more. And hiring capacity versus cul-de-sac talent. Hiring capacity means the person is able to do not only the job that you hire them for, but they can also grow and take on additional responsibilities. Cul-de-sac talent means they might be able to do the job that you hire them to do, but they don't have the capacity to take on new tasks, and they're not really going to grow out of that position into other things. And achieving accountability to the right standards kind of ties into that. You have to have standards yourself, and you have to be able to hold people accountable to the standards. It also ties into documentation and other things. So if your standards aren't documented, nobody else is going to know what they are and what you expect. So you need to tie all these things together. Teamwork, rock and roll, again, more along the lines of how we work together as teams, combining quality service and quantity service. So this is the whole idea that through leverage and building up systems models, and by training and consulting and retaining talent, that we can actually deliver a higher quality of service and a higher volume of service. So more units, more transactions, more families and people we can help at a high level. Money is very straightforward, right? So the 5 things, now we have to bring in money, and really sticking to the budget model and controlling your costs is the bottom line. The budget model is very straightforward. All the numbers are broken down for you. You can compare them to your business. Take a look at that. If you haven't gone back to see how your business is performing, set an appointment with me. We can easily do a 30-30-40 in less than 30 minutes over Zoom. We have the tools and the resources to do that. But the point around money is sticking to your budget model and controlling your costs. The 5th piece here, again, don't forget to reinvest in yourself. Staying focused on your 20% as the MREA, counterbalancing your life to maintain your energy at a high level. If you've read the one thing, there's a lot more discussion in the one thing about counterbalancing your life, and it is also covered later on in MREA. Later in sections pages up in 300. That was actually the trivia question for this week. What are the 5 energy sources of the MREA? That's on page 308, so take a look at that. Any questions on the 16 different, only 16 different items to go from earn to net? That's enough, right? Systems documentation. So another great, just a great graph to share with you here on page page 244. Thank you. That's another great page to memorize. So systems documentation. This is a great outline of how to document your systems. Now, this is something you can do. You can start to do this yourself, and I would do it at a very high level. Big bullet points. Don't go too deep at first. Get the framework organized. Your administrative assistant, that first admin hire, will help you to build out the detail behind these. And this is why and how hiring an administrative assistant is really the first key to growing past an individual business into a team-oriented business. But take the time. Think about how each of these items, you apply each of these items. Go through the different categories here. Look at how you communicate, how you work with buyers and sellers. Break that down. Think about how you like things to be done, how to answer phone calls, how emails are responded to. Just some of the simplest things. I was talking to a TL this morning, and she kind of had an interesting situation where she has an ISA, and her ISA was calling the database, and one of her previous clients said to the ISA, well, why are you calling me? Why didn't she call me? And then the TL was like, whoops, okay, so I need to take that back from the ISA. I need to make sure that allied resource, that I'm calling that allied resource, because the relationship's too important. I need to make those phone calls. So that was just one little instance, but how you do these things and how you want people to do them has to be documented. You can quickly get to a functional operations manual. just by outlining the big stuff, breaking it down further. But then you can go into the deeper levels as well as you go on. And here you can see that the details are being built out, start to detail as each layer goes on, how you want things done. And we do this as an office as well. We're not any organization, any company or organization, has to deal with this as well. How we document, how we operate and function. Unfortunately, people do turn over, people do leave, life goes on. And in order to backfill and replace and fill those positions, you need to have a plan, a structured plan around the operation so that the next person has the best chance for success coming into that role. And this is, I think, just a great outline for that. Has anybody taken the time to start documenting systems? Anybody have any interesting challenges going on with that? Do you feel like you have a modern, like a very well documented system, or what's the general feeling out there among people? How do you feel about your documentation? Francis works for Stephanie. Francis, you have your systems documented. Do you feel happy and comfortable with that?
Yeah, they are all in the CRM and also in Keller Williams Command. Awesome.
So you're even leveraging the tools to document that as well. That's great. Is there have you learned anything, any growing pains or anything unique? Any stories you could share?
Oh, from working with the CMA and the system?
Yeah, just over the period of time that you've been on the team, and because you've been with them now for what, close to 2 years?
More than a year, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just over the period of time since you took over, to now. Is there any particular challenge you faced that you overcame?
Yeah, I think because as a VA, the challenges that I've always shared with Stephanie is that the understanding of how the real estate really works in New Jersey, and then of course, and then after doing the job for a year now and going through the documents that I'm working on, that's where I slowly understand bit by bit how the process works. That's why it's really good to keep things documented so that you know where one transaction is going and what is where is their status right now, if there is a need of a specific document from other transaction parties, then I would be responsible to follow up with the other transaction party so that we have correct filing of all the things that we need for us to document it on the CRM.
Awesome. Yeah. So over time, have you realized if any efficiencies or gains in productivity by having these in place?
The CRM is actually very convenient, because if you need to go back to a specific detail or a specific document just to just to review something, or something's missing, or the clients need a specific document, you can go back to it. And it's quite easy actually, because you can just do like a control find if you title your documents pretty well. And yeah, that's basically the convenience of having a CRM. CRM, that's it.
Sure. Awesome, thanks for sharing. Anybody else have any lessons learned or thoughts on today, either around the challenges going from earn a million to net a million, or systems documentation? Sylvia and Lovis are here with us in the room. We are. Go ahead, Lovis.
I was going to say, I don't have anything, but documentation does make sense, if you're doing it wrong.
Right. Well, in your professional working experience, you've seen the benefit of that, right? You've worked in large organizations. Mm-hmm. They had to have these things documented in order to conduct business. Sure. Right. So it's very So it's very, it translates readily to the individual agent who's looking to grow and do more. I know some things in the office that I'd like to work on. Sylvia's helping me. We're working on some stuff from my point of view on things we can do to document the way we do business and the way we operate here. So there's always opportunity for improvement. Anyway, so that's the key takeaways for today's topics. Next week we have 2 more weeks left, and they're pretty lightweight items. Next week we'll look at goal to action, and we're really coming to the end of the book here. We've got about maybe 50, 60 pages left. In the back of the book, there's a bunch of other great takeaways, testimonials, and stories about some of the MREAs that help build the book and their experiences, as well as chart of accounts and other things in the back. So we'll continue next week. Does anybody else have anything for today?
Teacher and I have questions.
Yes, please, go ahead.
I thank you, Wendy, for letting me go first. Getting back to documentation, I mean, along the way, we've learned that if we don't document and we don't have the systems in place, you're creating your own lid for your future growth as well. That it's not a matter of just keeping it all in your head, because that doesn't really help you gain growth in your own career path. So I would say that's one of the things that agents could readily take into their own business practices, is to write it all down. And that way, you know, if it's systems and models that someone else can handle while you're doing the great task of whatever you like to do, whatever will grow your business, that's really, really an important function to have those systems and models in place.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Future. Wendy, go ahead.
I was just going to comment and say that all of our businesses are always changing and evolving. So I think most importantly, as we're changing and evolving in our businesses, we always have to go back and look at those documentations and how we do things and procedures to consider changing some of the things that are outlined in there to better help, you know, our teams and our staff and all of our businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, you're right to your point. There is a fair amount of documentation that we do to support the teams. Not necessarily just the compliance side, but also the team side, team agreements and individual member agreements, and helping them to structure and create some of their compensation plans and things. So yeah, that's
In the process of, you know, the flow of things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Ali, thanks for joining us today. Any questions, ahas, takeaways from you guys? Okay, if not, that's all right. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add or share? Okay. All right, great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today, and we'll just wrap up the recording here, and have a great rest of the week and productive weekend, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Great session.
Bye.